everybody. Welcome to PTW amps. I have on the workbench newly completed, built in this workshop, 5E3 Tweed Deluxe Replica, replicating the 15 watt all tube amp from the late 50s. I hand wire the amplifier, I do the cabinets, the tweed, the lacquering, all here in my, my workshop. I'm not going to talk too much at the beginning of the video. I'm just going to play the guitar through the amp on a number of settings. Now it's a 2-channel amp, normal and bright channel, volume control for each channel, a single tone control that works on both channels. I just wrote up some settings here so that I don't have to wave the camera around and tip the amp over and all that kind of stuff, so you can see what I got here. So I'm going to start off and plug into the first input, the normal channel at about 10 o'clock, just still fairly clean for this amp. I'm not using the bright channel at all here, and I got the tone control at just my favorite sweet spot, which is about 2 o'clock. Using a Stratocaster with Seymour Duncan pickups on the bridge pickup here. Normal channel at 10 o'clock. Switch to the neck pickup on the Strat, a little bit more of a slightly broken up but still relatively clean kind of blues tone. So there you go. Now, second setting, I'm going to, I'll just show you what I'm doing here. I'm going to raise the normal volume up to about 2 o'clock. It's the point where an amp like this really starts to break up and become more overdriven. There's no pedals involved here. What you're hearing so far is just straight into the amp. I'm going to leave the tone at 2 o'clock. Again, I'm not using the bright channel for this second setting. I've got the Strat back on the bridge pickup. All right, third setting, I'm going to basically just crank the normal volume full. It's going to get pretty loud here in the workshop. You know, it's the 15 watt amp. It's got a lot of output for the size of the amp. Going to leave the tone control where it is. Later on, maybe I'll do a little sweep of the tone control so you can hear that as well. So here's the third setting, normal channel cranked. Let me do a fourth setting here. I'm going to switch over to the bright channel. So here's the next setting. I'm just patched into the bright channel, so I don't have to switch the cord around, but you can just as easily patch into input 3 for the bright. I'm going to run the bright volume at 12 o'clock. Don't need quite as much of the tone brightness, so I'm going to run that at 12 o'clock as well. And let me do a little bit of clean rhythm stuff here with the Strat in that kind of Mark Knopfler-y sort of second position on the switch. There you go. And just while I'm still there with the bright volume at 12 o'clock, I'm just going to sweep the tone control for you. So I'll put it first of all on the 0 bassiest setting. Just play a couple chords and then I'll change the tone a little bit. So here's on the bass setting. Actually back on the bridge pickup here. And now the more normal place to have the tone, somewhere around 12 o'clock here. And now I'm going to crank the tone control right up to full brightness. And as you probably can hear, when you crank the tone control on either channel really, but especially on this bright channel, it adds a fair bit of hair, a little extra breakup, overdrivey sound to the amp. So in spite of simple controls, just having 3 controls, you got quite a lot of tonal variation. Now, something you can do with this amp, and this brings me to setting number 5, is you can run a little jumper cable between the 2 channels. There's 4 inputs, so you can plug into one and use 2 of the other. Any 2 will do between the 2 channels. Jumper the channels together. Those of you familiar with Marshalls will have probably done this on a Marshall amp, where you can kind of blend the 2 channels. The channels on this amp are in phase, unlike on later blackface and silverface amps, where the channels are out of phase and you can't blend them quite as easily, at least without modifying the amplifier. So I'm going to run I've actually got this at 10 o'clock, which is probably going to deafen me at some point making these videos. So I'm just going to run it at about 9 o'clock, both volume, normal and bright, at about 9 o'clock. I'll leave the tone at about 12 o'clock. And this is the setting where I tend to run this amp if I use an amp like this for my own gigging purposes. I do tend to jumper the channels and run it like that. So here we go. There you go. So there's both channels. Now, let me take a minute here and plug in a couple of pedals. So far, everything you've heard is just the sound from the amplifier itself, different pickups on the guitar and so on. I'm going to run a Hall of Fame mini reverb. There's no reverb inside the amp itself. It's a very simple amplifier as far as circuitry goes. I'll run a Hall of Fame reverb, and I'm going to use one of the overdrives that I favor, which is a Marshall Governor, kind of mid-gain, pretty basic overdrive pedal. I'm going to run that as well. I'm going to leave it bridged across the 2 channels, both volumes at 9 o'clock, so relatively low volume, but with a bit of crunch and reverb added. So here we go. So works pretty well with pedals. As I said, that's basically there's the guitar portion of the video. I'm just gonna flip the mic around a little bit so I can get a little more on mic. And if you've heard enough, thank you very much for watching. I very much appreciate it. I'm just gonna go on and talk a little bit about some of the features of the amp, show you some more of the details. So if you're interested, just keep watching here. Let me just turn it off. Okay, so all tube amplifier. This is a dovetailed pine cabinet, real tweed that's been lacquered. I do all this stuff myself here in the workshop, and let me turn the amp around so you can see the back of it. So it has inside an all hand-wired eyelet board. That's the traditional construction method used on the late 50s originals of these. Make my own eyelet bores. No kits involved here. All the stuff is done here in the workshop. If you want to see pictures of the inside of the amp and the circuitry, go to my blog, PTW Amps at Blogspot. I'll put a link at the bottom of this video so you can find it. And you can always just Google PTW Amps and you'll find pictures and stuff. Actually, at this point, I can show you the control panel. 2 volumes, got chicken head knobs, 2 volumes, a single tone, on-off switch, standby, runs a 2 amp fuse, and you got the 4 inputs here. I've got them bridged across with this little guitar cable to do that channel blending thing. This is a plexiglass panel. Tubes, I'll start from left and go to right here. So this is a tube rectified amp. There is a 5Y3S JJ tube for the rectification. Power tubes are Tungsol 6V6 GT, about 15 watt amp output as I mentioned earlier. This amp here, which runs, tube here, which runs the phase inverter, a 12AX7 JJ. This has a Cathodyne phase inverter. It's a bit of an older style of phase inverter. The only time I've really seen Cathodyne phase inverters is in 50s and very early 60s amps. Some of the vintage Fender amps, other amps that I've restored along the way. So I went with the traditional phase inverter. The first preamp tube, so where most of the gain is coming from, is a 12AY7 JJ tube. A 12AY7 is a little bit of a lower, or quite a bit of a lower gain tube than a 12AX7. That is the traditional tube for that position. Some people in a 5E3 Deluxe will run a 12AX7 for more gain. I personally find that there's, as you've heard, the amp breaks up pretty nicely with that tube, and I find the 12AX7 tends to kind of take this into sort of 1968 blue cheer, sort of fuzzy territory. So if that's where you want to go, put a 12AX7 in there. Though I find the 12AY7 is the for my taste, the optimum tube there. What else? Cabinet is shellacked inside. The Tweed is lacquered. Amp weighs about 26 pounds, so it's fairly portable. 15 watts is a pretty good wattage for an amp that you would use in club gigs. You of course could mic it and use it in any size of gig. Pretty good studio amp as well. If you want to get natural breakup from your amp, it's nice to have a bit of a lower wattage 15 watt amps, so you don't have to deafen everybody and blow out the windows while you're doing it. So there you have it. If you want more information, you can ask questions in the comments below this video. Please subscribe to my channel, PTW Amps. And if you just go to Google and search PTW Amps, you might want to add PTW Amps Canada. You will find me. Plenty of pictures of this amp, other information about this and other projects I've been working on. So thank you very much for watching. Take care, everybody.